one fine day I just went out for a swim and took a dive, and as I went to take a dive into the pool, it was like electric waves, just kind of electric shock waves shooting up my body, up to my waist. So I wasn't quite sure what was going on, but then when I'd gotten home towards the end of the evening, I was starting to feel numb, and this numbness horrifyingly was starting to feel like paralysis. So I was starting to lose my ability to be able to move. So I was rushed off to an MRI unit in the capital of the country. We only had one at the time because I live in Cyprus. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you and nice to have you on today. And just to quickly recap, sharing the journey of suffering with multiple sclerosis and how I transformed that into perfect health, and how we can all transform it to perfect health. Hey Philippe, nice to have you on the show today. Cheers. And everybody can beat their challenging situations, and if we know how, we can also learn the tools to be able to heal our situations. Hi, how you doing? Kisses to you. And so after I was diagnosed with this, I mean, I was really in ignorance actually. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew that multiple sclerosis was something that happened to other people, could never happen to me. And it's something where it puts you in a wheelchair. That's all I knew. And what I knew was actually true, because Kalimera Tiganis, nice to have you. So that was the absolute truth, because horrifyingly enough, that is what actually happened. I did end up in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. I was blind. I had double vision, which is kind of like looking into a mirror and everything is sort of shattered when you look in the mirror. Yeah, really, for real. And this horrifying scenario went on for about 7 years. Imidera Moina Greek Cypriot. My mother is Greek Cypriot, says Alice. Wonderful, so is mine. And lovely to have you. So I was in a wheelchair, I was blind, I suffered a whole bunch of other symptoms, which was like ripping, burning sensations in my legs when I could feel them. I also suffered from like paralysis through half of my head and half of my scalp. So half of my face felt like a cerebral palsy situation where you feel like everything sort of drops. So all these symptoms were on and off for about 7 years. Now, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't know too much about the situation, and so I allowed for the one time only, of having medical intervention. And what they did was they gave me intravenous cortisone that they put into my arm, and I was in like a bed for about 3 or 4 days. Now, the good thing about it was that the paralysis immediately cleared up after a few days. The terrible thing about it was that it made me absolutely comatose. So I had a really bad reaction to the cortisone. My blood cells went up like into the gazillions, millions. And I was kind of slipping into a coma and slipping out of life. God bless you. And things were really, really bad. I mean, what is the point of getting the feeling back in your legs when you're going to die anyway, right? What would be the point of that? So that was a really nasty experience. I was also given a lumbar puncture to diagnose, to make sure that in fact it was multiple sclerosis, and the diagnosis was yes, it is, through the lumbar puncture that I did. But the lumbar puncture for me was an absolutely horrendous experience. I'm not trying to scare you guys that might need a lumbar puncture here. It's just that because I was a fitness instructor and a personal trainer up until the time of my diagnosis, my back muscles were really quite strong. So the doctors were finding it really difficult to get into my muscles to get the spinal tap that they needed. So because of the strength of my muscles, that was making me faint, and I was fitting, and it was just a nightmare. So I eventually came out of the hospital. Well, I was in the MS state for about 7 years. That's how long it took. But there's a really weird conundrum to my situation, and that is that I was sick, and at the same time I was healing myself. And because people were inspired by that, people started coming to see me for help. And I was really honest about it. I was like, guys, you know what? Like, I'm not 100%. I'm still suffering with this condition, but I can apply some of the things on you that I've applied on myself to help me. So they were like, yeah, you know, go for it. We would like to try what it is that you were doing for yourself too. Because when I came out, after I had that one cortisone treatment, I made a conscious vow. And the vow was that I would never, ever seek to have medical intervention for my condition ever again, without knowing how I would deal with that, without knowing absolutely anything. This feeling, it just sort of like came up and out from my soul. I mean, I was still, excuse my language, but I was scared shitless. I really was. I really didn't know what I was doing, but it was just this inner voice that said, you know what, you're not going to do this. This is not what you are going to do. You are going to find the way. So I trusted that feeling, left the hospital, and the very first thing that I learned to do, welcome Akil, was my mum knew a lot about nutrition, so I thought, great, I'll use nutrition to heal my body. It's the first thing that I could kind of get to grips with and put my hands on. So lovely to have you, Akil. What I did was I started to detoxify myself, detoxify my liver, detoxify my kidneys. So I went on like a reduction diet. So I went from like eating normally to then eating just pulses and salads. And then from there I reduced further and went into fruits and vegetables. And then from there I reduced again and went into juices and water. And then I did enemas, and I just kept going just to clean my body out from that cortisone treatment that I was given from the very first multiple sclerosis attack that I had. So you guys that are just joining us, and thanks for your patience, guys that are already in. Just to recap, I'm an intuitive mentor and I educate people in metaphysics and esoteric wisdoms. And I come from a past of multiple sclerosis where I was very sick, paralysed and blind and a bunch of other stuff, which I self-recovered from, and I'm now facilitating others to transcend their challenges and teaching others tools who do the classes to reclaim their sovereignty so that they can heal themselves. And so back to the story. I started to heal myself through nutrition, through supplementation. Then I began to study. That was the next step. So I started to study everything that I could get my hands on that was alternative. So I found out that yoga is good for multiple sclerosis. I studied yoga. I found out that reflexology is good for multiple sclerosis. So I studied reflexology. I studied naturopathy and I studied traditional Chinese medicine. In the patches where I was well enough to do it, these are the things that I was doing. I got studying. I also studied quantum technologies and quantum approaches. And then I started to get a little bit more metaphysical. All this stuff was helping me to a certain degree to heal my life and to make changes, but it wasn't enough. I didn't just want to be okay. I wanted to be healthier than what I was before I got sick. I wanted to be healthier. And I knew, thanks for all the heart, guys, keep it going, love it. So I knew that I just had to keep going. I knew there was more to the energetic world than what I knew. So I just kept the investigation going. So kept the investigation going. And I found that once I started to study esoteric techniques, and once I started to study the science of metaphysics, then this is how things really started to put themselves right. I started to experiment on myself. I learned a few modalities, one of which was theta healing, which was a really good baseline for me, but I just had to take it further. So one fine day I was in Thailand having a break, and I just started to receive all this how can I say, like intuitive downloads in a way. I call it intuitive reception myself. Thank you, darling. I love you too. So I started to receive all this intuitive reception, and I knew absolutely nothing about what I was getting. Okay, maybe a little bit, but not too much. So some of the stuff was really unknown to me. I started to receive information about frequency and vibration and light and sound and the golden light of infinite wisdom, and how everything actually arises from this primary source. And everybody has a different terminology for their primary source. It could be your own self. Alice, I'm from London, UK, but I now live in southern Cyprus. So I started to get all these weird wisdoms and just started to apply. And lo and behold, my situation started to change. So from coming in and out of relapses, the relapses started to dissipate. My symptoms started to decrease. My suffering started to decrease also. And it was really such an amazing thing, you know. I couldn't even believe that it was happening to myself. And so as I started to heal, people could see the difference. They were like, wow, you know, what is it you're doing? What doctors are you going to? And I wasn't seeing any doctors at all. I was just studying the art of metaphysics and starting to apply formulas and templates and guinea pig on myself, friends and families, and also some clients that I had from reflexology and from my biofeedback machine and all this other stuff that I was doing before that. And they just trusted me because they could see that I was improving. So I started to apply all of these esoteric wisdoms on myself. Thanks for joining Ferdigan, if I'm saying it correctly. And things started to really, really improve. My multiple sclerosis symptoms started to decrease. My relapses started to decrease. They became further apart. And the most important thing is that I started to regain my vitality. Okay, my vitality, because I had none. It was like there was no energy flowing through my body. I was listless and fatigued the whole time. My mind was always foggy. My speech was slurred at times, and things were really quite dire. And so things really started to improve. People started to ask me for treatments, and it just started to come together like that. As they improved, I continued to improve, and then people began to say, well, wow, I would really like to learn this. Can you teach me? And so I said, well, I don't know. And they said, well, we'd love to learn. And so I started to put my formulas into manuals so that it would be teachable and transferable. And classes started to gather, and I started to teach people my esoteric and metaphysical formulas and techniques so that they would also be able to heal their lives. And so I created a whole bunch of classes. There's about 13 of them now. And people caught wind of what it is what I do and my story. And I started to get invites to national television. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Cyprus is like an Orthodox country. So it's very heavily indoctrinated in the Christian religion. And unfortunately, a bunch of that then postulates that esoteric wisdom and energetic practices are against Christianity, which is actually quite incorrect. If we study Christianity or any other religion correctly, they are actually based on these wisdoms. So I started to get invited on national television, and I'd speak about my story, and then things just went from there. That's how my career began. People started to seek me out for help, and it became professional, and I offer my advice and my mentoring now professionally, and also my classes too. And so now we're starting to broaden things out a little bit. I've written a book. The book is called The Miracle Frequency. And The Miracle Frequency, you can find that on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle. And you can also get hold of it on my website, which is fusion7healing.com. And the 7 is a number, not a word. So I wrote a book about it, and then after I wrote a book about it, then we started to expand. And so now there are talks and lectures that are being carried out in